When a narcissist sets their sights on you, child of God, one of the first things they aim to do is blur your vision. Their power lies not in strength, but in deception. They create an atmosphere where truth becomes difficult to hold on to. Suddenly, you find yourself doubting things you were once sure of: your worth, your memory, your place in this world. The narcissist is skilled at spinning narratives where they're always the victim, always the hero, and you become cast as the villain in your own story. But in these moments of confusion, when it feels like the very ground beneath you is shaking, God sends his angel of truth. This is not a figure of imagination or poetry. No, I'm talking about that very real experience when God opens your eyes. It may come quietly, like a whisper that you can't ignore, or it may come suddenly, like a floodlight in a dark room. But either way, clarity breaks through. You start to see that what you've been told about yourself was a lie. You start to recognize the patterns, how conversations always turn back to them, how your feelings have been minimized or twisted, how love has been turned into control. That's not just human insight, that's divine intervention. You see, the enemy knows that if he can control your mind, he doesn't need chains on your body. He doesn't need to lock you up physically if he can convince you mentally that you are trapped. But God, in his mercy, will not allow his children to remain in that kind of bondage. When the angel of truth comes, the fog begins to lift. You remember who you are, not who the narcissist says you are, but who God says you are. And there is power in that. There is freedom in that. It's not always easy. Sometimes realizing the truth hurts before it heals. It hurts to look back and see how long you were deceived, how much time you lost trying to earn love that was never really love. But better an uncomfortable truth than a comfortable lie, because only truth can set you free. That's not just scripture to quote, that's reality to live. When you finally see clearly, you begin to reclaim your voice, your choices, your destiny, and all of that starts with one simple thing: God revealing truth. Now understand this: truth doesn't change the narcissist, it changes you. It doesn't guarantee they'll stop lying, but it guarantees you'll stop believing them. It doesn't promise they'll face their wrongs, but it promises you'll no longer carry false guilt. The angel of truth is not about making others admit what they've done. It's about opening your eyes so you no longer walk in darkness. So, when you feel overwhelmed by confusion and tangled in a web of manipulation, remember, God sends his angel of truth. And once you see clearly, there's no going back. The lie loses its grip, and you step forward in freedom, not by your own strength, but by the light God placed before your feet. Once your eyes are opened to the truth, there's another challenge waiting: endurance. Knowing the truth doesn't always change the situation overnight. The narcissist doesn't suddenly back away because you've seen through their game. No, they may push even harder, sensing that their grip on you is slipping. That's when things can get especially heavy. You see, after the fog lifts, you have to walk through what feels like a battlefield. But this is where God steps in again, not just to show you the truth, but to give you strength to stand in it. I'm not talking about ordinary strength. I'm not talking about the kind of strength you muster up by gritting your teeth and clenching your fists. I mean the strength that comes from the Spirit of God's strength that holds you up when everything around you says you should fall apart. Because the reality is, dealing with a narcissist is exhausting. It drains you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It feels like you're running a race with no finish line in sight. And it's in those quiet, lonely moments when nobody else sees, when nobody else understands, that God sends the angel of strength. That strength doesn't always feel like a burst of energy. Sometimes it's simply the ability to get up and face another day. It's the quiet endurance that keeps you from giving up. It's standing firm when you could so easily collapse under the weight of betrayal, manipulation, and isolation. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about standing anyway, trusting that God is holding you even when your own legs feel weak. What's remarkable about the strength God gives is that it doesn't come from ignoring reality. It doesn't come from denial. It comes right in the middle of the storm. You feel the full weight of what's happening, yet you're not crushed by it. People might look at you and wonder, how are they still holding on? And the answer is simple. God is carrying you. You're not surviving because of your own willpower. You're surviving because the Lord has given you what you need to endure. And let me tell you something, this strength is not just for the moment. It's building something in you. Every day you stand, every moment you refuse to fold under pressure, God is shaping a deeper resilience in you. He's preparing you for more. That strength is making you unshakable, not just for now, but for the future, for the calling He has on your life. See, the narcissist believes that by wearing you down, by chipping away at you little by little, they can erase who you are. But they don't know who they're dealing with, because the child of God doesn't crumble easily. When God sends the angel of strength, no scheme, no slander, no manipulation can bring you down. You may bend, but you will not break, and when it's all said and done, you'll still be standing, not by your own might, but by the strength God placed within you. Once you've been given the strength to stand, there's still another lesson the Lord teaches, a lesson not many are ready to learn, because it runs against our natural instincts. When someone tries to destroy your name, when they twist your words, when they paint you as the problem while hiding their own wickedness, everything in you wants to rise up and defend yourself. You want to make it plain, clear your name, set the record straight. But that's where God does something unexpected. Instead of telling you to fight back with your own words, God sends what I call the angel of silence. It takes more strength to stay silent than it does to speak sometimes. It takes more trust to let God handle what you could try handling yourself. And the truth is, when dealing with a narcissist, no amount of explanation will ever be enough for them. They're not interested in understanding, they're interested in control. They will twist your words, spin your explanations, use your honesty against you. That's why silence becomes not just wise, but necessary. It's not silence out of fear. It's silence out of faith. There's a reason the Bible says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness is not weakness. It's a posture of trust while they lie, while they gather others to their side, while they try to make you look like the villain. You stand firm and quiet, knowing the truth doesn't need to shout. God Himself knows, and in time God reveals. Silence becomes a testimony. It becomes a weapon sharper than words. Now, I'm not saying there aren't moments to speak. There are times when God will open a door and give you the right words to say. But there's a difference between speaking in obedience and speaking out of desperation. When you feel that burning need to defend yourself at any cost, that's usually the flesh. But when God moves, when the Spirit leads, the words you do speak will carry weight, not because you're fighting for your name, but because you're standing in His name. Understand this. The narcissist feeds off reactions. When you cry out, when you try to argue, when you try to expose them on your own terms, that just gives them more fuel. They'll turn your defense into their offense. But when you stand quiet, when you let them rage while you remain still, they lose that grip. And it's in that silence that you give God room to work, because sometimes God waits until you stop swinging your own sword before he steps in with his. There is a dignity in silence, a quiet strength that says, I know who holds my future. I don't need to prove myself to anyone. And when you walk in that kind of stillness, surrounded by the angel of silence, there is a peace that no storm can shake. Because the battle doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the Lord. Now, after you've been given truth, strength, and silence, there's still that question that presses on your heart. What about justice? What about all the wrong that was done in secret? What about the lies that seemed to go unchecked, the manipulation that nobody else saw, the damage left behind when the narcissist just moves on like nothing ever happened? That question weighs heavy. You see people walking around, smiling, untouched, while you carry wounds they gave you. But hear me, God is not blind, God is not asleep, and he sends his angel of justice in his own time and his own way. It may not happen when you expect it, you may not get to witness the moment, but make no mistake, justice comes. You have to understand that God's justice isn't like man's justice. It doesn't always show up in the headlines or in a courtroom. Sometimes it's quieter, deeper. Sometimes the very person who tried to destroy you ends up living with a hollow soul, eaten up from the inside by the consequences of their own choices. Because sin carries its own judgment. You can lie to others, but you can't lie to God. And a narcissist, for all their show, for all their posturing, cannot escape the weight of God's truth pressing down on them. What a man sows, that shall he also reap. That's not a maybe, that's a promise. You might not see the reaping. You might have already moved on, grown stronger, found peace, but somewhere down the line, what they planted will grow into something they can't outrun. That's why you don't have to carry the burden of revenge. You don't have to waste your strength plotting how to make them feel what you felt. Leave that to the Lord. His justice is perfect. His timing is exact. And don't think for a second that justice means bitterness. It's not about holding onto anger. It's about trusting that no wrong goes unseen by God. While you're healing, while you're walking forward in freedom, God is handling the things behind the scenes. It might be years later, it might be through circumstances no one predicted, but trust justice will not be forgotten. There's something else about God's justice. It's aimed not just at punishing evil, but at protecting his people. When God judges, he clears the path for his children to walk freely again. He removes stumbling blocks. He cuts off those who tried to cut you down, and in that there's mercy, mercy for you, mercy even for them if they choose to repent. But whether they do or not, that's not your burden to carry. Your role is to stand, to trust, and to move forward. So when it looks like the narcissist has won, when it feels like evil is triumphing over good, remember, God's justice may not be loud, but it is sure. The scales will balance, the truth will rise, and what they meant for evil, God will always turn for good. There comes a point, after the storm has passed, when you stand and look around at what's been left behind. And if you've ever walked through the kind of battle I'm talking about, the kind where a narcissist has tried to tear your life apart, you know what I mean. Things don't always look the same afterward. Friendships might have been lost. Opportunities might have slipped away. Pieces of your peace, your confidence, even your sense of self might feel like they've been scattered. You may feel like too much has been taken from you, but I want to tell you something today that the enemy doesn't want you to hear. God is not only a God of justice, he is a God of restoration. See, when a narcissist tries to destroy you, they aren't just trying to hurt you in the moment. They're trying to steal from your future. They want you so focused on survival that you forget how to dream again. But here's where God shows himself mighty in a way that silences every accusation, every loss. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were before it all started. No, God rebuilds things better, stronger, wiser, fuller. You look back at the things you thought were essential, certain people, certain relationships, certain positions, and you realize now they were never meant to carry you forward. God allowed those things to be stripped away so he could place in your life what was meant to last. That's restoration. It's not just getting back what was stolen. It's receiving something new that fits who you've become through the trial. And hear me, restoration doesn't always look flashy. It's not always about material blessings or public victories. Sometimes restoration looks like peace you didn't have before. It looks like joy that no one can touch. It looks like a clearer mind, a stronger spirit, a deeper relationship with God. Things the narcissist tried to crush in you. God breathes life back into those places. You smile again, you trust again, not because you're naive, but because God has healed what was broken. What's powerful about this kind of restoration is that it turns your scars into stories. You no longer hide the fact that you went through the fire. You show it because it speaks of God's faithfulness. People see you and say, "How did they survive that?" And your answer isn't, "I was strong." Your answer is, "God restored me." Now, don't let the enemy fool you into believing it's too late. I don't care how long it's been, how much has been lost, how broken things may look. God's timing is never off. Restoration doesn't come early, and it doesn't come late. It comes exactly when it's supposed to, and when it does, you'll know it wasn't by your hand, but by His. So, when you stand looking at the ruins of what was, don't lose heart. Trust that the God who allowed the storm is the same God who rebuilds after it's over. And what He builds cannot be torn down by any hand but His own. After God has opened your eyes with truth, after He's given you strength to stand, after He's taught you the power of silence and shown His justice, after He's restored what was broken, there is still one more thing He does, and this right here is what ties it all together. God does not let any of it be wasted. He sends what I call the angel of purpose, because everything you walked through, the lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it wasn't just about survival. It was about preparation. It was about shaping you for something greater than you knew. Now I know when you're in the middle of that fight, it doesn't feel like purpose. It feels like pain. It feels unfair. It feels unnecessary. But what you come to learn is that God never lets His children suffer without reason. Even when it looks like chaos, He's weaving something intentional through every moment. See, the enemy thought breaking you down would be the end of your story. But in God's hands, it's the beginning of a new one. That's why you can stand today and say, "It wasn't just about me getting through it. It was about me growing through it." Because now, having come through what you've come through, you are not the same person. You've got eyes that see clearer. You've got wisdom that can't be faked. You can spot manipulation from a mile away, not because someone told you about it in a book, but because you lived it. And God can use that. God will use that. There are people out there right now, caught in the same traps you escaped. People who don't know the truth yet, who don't have the strength yet. And God's going to send you to speak life to them, to tell them, "I know what it looks like, but I also know what God can do." That's purpose. That's ministry. That's how God turns pain into testimony. What the narcissist meant to destroy you has now positioned you to help set others free. And don't think it's only about speaking or preaching. Sometimes it's in how you carry yourself, how you walk into a room with quiet authority, with peace that can't be explained. People notice that, they feel that, your very life becomes a message that says, you can survive this, you can overcome this, and hear me, purpose isn't limited by what you lost. You may feel like too much time has passed, like too much damage was done, but God's purpose operates outside of your timeline. He's already accounted for the years the enemy tried to steal. He's already made provision for what you thought was wasted. When God calls you forward, He doesn't ask for what you don't have. He uses exactly what's left in your hand, multiplied by His power. So don't just look back at the battle with bitterness. Look at it with understanding. You weren't just fighting for yourself, you were being prepared. And now that you've endured, now that you've overcome, step forward knowing this: your story isn't over. It's just beginning.